hello, and welcome back to round two of our Tuesday night fight night. We got two local players for us, two pretty established players. We got Mick Diff, one of our mods, and we have Aiden G, who has been relatively new, but has been incredibly consistent playing in the past couple of leagues and the past couple Saturday events. We got Mick Diff on Dane Mill and Aiden G on Grixis Control. I think this is going to be a fun one. Here's my question,
Yeah.
Pez. Who do you think is favored in this game one?
In game one, I think Mike's going to have the advantage here, given that there's the unknown information, particularly about Archive Trap, for one. The other thing as well is that I think in game one, the main deck copies of, I believe the main deck copies of Surgical Extraction could come in clutch in some cases. But the other thing as well is just that the main deck is probably more tutored for a more fair game plan. It's not kind of designed to get through, an army of O2 and O3 crabs that are not applying pressure to your life total, but are designed to apply pressure to your library.
Yeah, that's kind of what we expect in a lot of game one control matchups against Dane Mill. The one interesting part is this being Grixis control and the Gurmag anglers being there does mean that Aiden is actually able to kind of pivot and take that pressure role, right? So the Gurmags are kind of able to take the same role as maybe like a Monastery Mentor in the initial 60 plan would be for like a blue white variant of this deck in the matchup. But I do agree that unless Aiden kind of figures out what's going on in this matchup quickly and is able to really get that pressure going, it is rather favored for Mike now.
Yeah, and of note too, it could be as simple as just like I'm gonna play out a Hedron crab, and then next turn it goes Hedron crab fetch land, mill over both Gurmags. It's like, oh.
That is true. That is a way for it to happen. Of course, there is amount of reanimate ability that Aiden has. Aiden has two Lily on the Last Hopes, the card that we actually saw dominate the previous round's game one. And
Yeah.
that Liliana is able to -2, which unfortunately mills Aiden himself a little bit, which is
Oh, hitting
not blocked.
Snapcaster is big.
Yes, that is. That
Of
is
note here too, it almost looked for a second there like Mike played the land out, and Aiden's like, "Wait, you're targeting me?" Hedron crab being a big card out of specifically the Hogak decks.
Oh, that's true. All right, Aiden now knows exactly what's going on. This is not a Hogak variant that's playing a basic island. No, this
No.
is trying to get all the way there and mill you over.
Yeah. One, two, and three. Okay, so we have hit a Hymn to Turok, two Ponders, and a Snapcaster Mage now, on top of two lands. So that actually seems pretty good. Point. Now, we don't know exactly what is in Aiden's hand, but this is not bad. And the other thing, too, is Mike could potentially be holding onto a couple Archive Traps, which would be absolutely devastating if this fetch line gets cracked.
Yeah, the archive trap head game is such an interesting thing in all of these matchups. It kind of makes so when you know that you're up against archive track, you're kind of
Ooh.
priced into fetching as soon as possible.
Yep.
Basically, trying to make it in the later game, you're able to just completely turn off and invalidate any archive traps unless they're paid for five.
Yeah.
Ooh,
And we are immediately snapping off the Forcible on this Bitter Blossom because this is a card that Grixis Control does not want to see make game one.
yeah, I mean, if Aiden is for some reason able to get through the mill plan, Acemern, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the follow. But the Bitter Blossom is able to do this thing where if for some reason Mike is unable to get all the way on the mill plan, which we're already thinking is really advantage in this matchup, Grixis Control will lose to an army of flyers 100% when there's no Plague Engineer in the main board.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually double fetching here, interestingly. So we got Basic Swamp and then Underground Sea of note here. Mike shuffling up, so I'm assuming there's a Hymn to Turok. 3, 4. Man,
Exactly.
Hymn to Turok being great tonight.
So with this him to Turok resolving with no plays in response, we know there's no archive trap in Mike's hand because he would immediately cast it off in response to this him to Turok if for some reason he hadn't wanted to um, after the initial fetch land. But
Yeah.
we'll see the way that this plays out. I really want to know what's coming out. We're having another fetch land and a daze. All right.
Interesting that the days wasn't fired off there on the hymn.
Yeah, it is a little bit. It's able to give you another land to replay.
Yeah.
All in all, potentially wanted to hold on to it in case there's kind of a turn 3 or turn 4 jam out for like a Jace or a Lily or kind of any of those other threats. Well, when Aiden realizes that he really needs to deploy pressure, just
Yeah.
unfortunately losing the days in that him to Turok exchange.
Okay.
Doc, I
So
do have to say I don't think Sedgemoor list works in Mike's list. I think there's better ways, kind of better army in a can type cards, especially when not many of the other sideboard plan pieces are going into that heavy beatdown plan. That said, Sedgemoor Witch would be pretty cool in Grixis control.
yeah. So of note here, huge. Mike misses last land drop, so I totally get not dazing now because if he'd bounced the other island back to hand and the daze got countered, and then both lands were gone, that's a ton of trouble. And
That
it
is
looks like we actually got a Thieves Guild Enforcer come down, which is really good. And then we flipped over or played out, entered the battlefield, milled over a Brainstorm and a Volcanic Island, and then played out Prismatic Vista, hit Baleful Strix, Brainstorm, and Kolaghan's Command. So we're hitting lots of good cards here.
we've only seen one Snapcaster Mage so far, right? So there's still two more in the deck. So there's kind of this weird threat as we're milling more that it's like any Snapcaster Mage that Aiden draws are just getting better and better with the amount of choices he's able to make.
Yeah, and we're gonna see a Lightning Bolt here on the Thieves Guild Enforcer.
Interesting choice there, choosing not to hit the crab.
I think the thing is that the Thieves Guild Enforcer, it applies pressure.
Yeah, so it's able to actually combat the planeswalkers when they come down. So, for instance, if Aiden
Yeah.
jams out for a Jace, it's going to die to the 3/2.
Well, yeah, and the other thing as well is that does the Thieves Guild Enforcer mill again when it hits or no?
No, it's just a 3/2, and it's when
Okay,
Rogues ETB that it mills, right?
gotcha. Okay, yeah, I could see that. I could also see just not wanting to pressure the 3-2. So, is this a okay? There are no copies of Force and Negation here, so we're fetching in response, milling 3 cards. Land, Snapcaster. There's the second Snapcaster.
There's only one left in the deck. Of course, the Lilianas are also able to buy that back, coming in and going down with the initial minus.
Yep. Huge, huge, huge graveyard. So if you're in Mike's shoes, you definitely do not want Aiden getting a Visions of Beyond.
Oh, that is an ancestral recall, folks.
Oh wow, 21 cards in Aiden's graveyard. Oh my goodness.
Ex- Of course, 20 cards needed to turn that from just a cantrip and make it the busted card that we know and love. However,
Yeah.
that's kind of exactly what you want to do after a him to Turok, right? Like, Mike was going down on cards. Aiden is kind of joining him after the Force of Will, in which he 2'd for 1 himself for the Bitter Blossom. But, man, just Ancestral Recall off the top feels oh so good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And of note there too, the fetch land being the last 3 cards needed in order to turn it on to specifically the Ancestral Recall version. I believe this hymn is still on the stack. And looks like it's gonna resolve here.
It looks like the players were talking about what's in the graveyard and naming. I wouldn't be surprised if Mike does have a surgical in hand and was kind of seeing if there's anything that he really wanted to hit before this hymn came in.
Yeah. So we got card number 3, and then card number 3 again. Days and a surgical.
There we go.
Okay. See, I'm thinking hard about that surgical there. Hilariously as well, Aiden just rife with basics this game.
Yeah, it does not really matter for this matchup, however, right? Like,
No. There
you
we
do not
go,
need to worry
another
about
land.
wastelands on a Dane mill. And a
Yeah.
fetch land too. This one crab has milled over so many cards. This is just amazing.
Yeah. That was actually 2 fetch lands and a Kolaghan's Command. Here's a ponder. 1, 2, 3. Let's hope we get something good here.
Show me the archive trap.
So keeps, draws a card. We'll see what we got coming up here. Pay 2, glimpse. Show me a glimpse. Yes! Let's go top 10.
What do you think's locked in Aiden's hand that he isn't playing? Is it just like a Jace that he hasn't chosen to play yet?
Force.
Is it
Um,
is it just removal spells? Is it just like sitting on well no, those
wow.
fatal
That was
push.
some gas. Force of Will, Jace, Lightning Bolt, Hull Breacher, and Ponder Brainstorm Fatal Push. Like, oh my goodness, that was a good mill.
It was quite good.
As far as what's in hand, it's kind of hard to say about what could be left in hand there that would be worth keeping back. I could potentially see a Hull Breacher.
Yeah, potentially the lilies as well. There was no great point to deploy it so far, especially when Aiden was kind of just tapping out, trying to whittle down at Mike's hand with the hymns. I am
Yeah,
interested to see what these are going to be, but Aiden with over half of his library gone now at this point. So
yep,
the clock is very real. Has not established any pressure points yet against Mike to start beating in.
yep.
Um,
Gets another basic island. Mill over three more. Lily the Last Hope, Fetch Land, and Fetch Land. Oh man, Aiden's just not allowed to shuffle his library this game.
that's all right. I think Aiden is going to be happy about that in the long
Yeah.
run.
I'm pretty sure Aiden should be suspecting Archive Trap at this point, so he's probably glad he's not drawing fetches. But even then, just the amount of lands that have been flipped over, there might not be much left to get. Oh wow, are we going for Visions of Beyond here?
Another
Wow, that was
incessant.
an
So
amazing last
good.
card in hand.
And this is kind of exactly the reason that we thought that this was going to be a difficult game one for Aiden to deal with. Was he very much needed to deploy early pressure because this long game is
Cling
cling.
to Dust.
Okay,
Interesting.
just because this long game is kind of Aiden's, or I'm sorry, Mike's.
Oh, I like that a lot. Hits his own Liliana the Last Hope to exile it. Oh my goodness! So that way it cannot be surgical.
That is pretty great. I mean, there's no reason to hit anything in Mike's deck, right? There's
Yeah,
absolutely no graveyard recursion on
I
his.
like that a lot too. Deal 2 damage to the Hedron Crab and then return Snapcaster Mage from your graveyard to your hand. Oh my goodness,
All right, this is pretty fantastic. Now we're going to
that
be
was
able
a
to
very good
Snapcaster
turn.
with one of the other, with any of these kind of toolbox cards that are now in the graveyard. Like every single spell that is in the deck is now also at least has one in the graveyard. So Aiden's Snapcaster Mage is just flushed for choices.
Yeah. And very specifically as well, just something I want to point out for people who may not be as familiar with it. The thing that sets Grixis control, especially apart from, Jeskai or Blue White, Sultai, Four Color, anything like that, is the Kolaghan's commands and how good they are, specifically out of Grixis control. They play a lot of them, and they are extremely good. And we got another Hedron Crab. Play a land. Three more. Let's see
So
here. Fatal
before
Push, Baleful Strix, Baleful Strix. Oh my goodness.
thanks to our lovely table spotter. Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Astrid letting us know before this glimpse, of course it got forced. At the moment, there are 11 cards in Aiden's deck. So pressure needs to come on incredibly quickly.
yeah. And of note here as well, that force pitched the Snapcaster Mage. Him to Turok. Or is that Liliana's Triumph? Oh, that's an Old Border Lily's Triumph. Oh my goodness. That being said, there's still a lot of cards that are just like live right off the top. Looks like we just lost video there for a second. Oh, we got it back. Okay.
This is it. That was such a good draw. This is the threat that Aiden needed to be able to start to claw back into this game.
Yep. Yeah, Gurmag is huge here.
So
Uh
of note, we haven't seen any Drown the Locks, right? So that is a potential card.
Oh, Hardcast Archive Trap.
That's it. That's the
Yes.
game.
Aiden scoops it
Oh,
up.
oh wow.
That's awesome.
That was a really interesting game one. Aiden was starting to claw out of it. It looked like when we got to the point that with the K command was coming in, killing Crab, getting Snapcaster Mage back, able to get some value and was about to put in pressure. But Mike just had the last burn spells needed, right? Had the cards needed to convert for the last 15 or whatever 20 cards to be milled over. That was a really interesting game. However, this is about to get a lot harder for Mike in this matchup for sure. So on Aiden's sideboard plan, Aiden has 2 Flusterstorms, 1 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Nile Spellbomb, 3 Pyroblasts, 2 Surgical Extractions, 2 Thought Seizes, 2 Blood Moons, and 2 Plague Engineers. What are you liking out of this sideboard plan?
So I like the Plague Engineers normally, but in this case, all the crabs have too high of toughness for this. I could actually see potentially naming Rogue specifically. But at the same time, I don't think it's good enough given that if there's 8 cards in graveyard, the Thieves Guild Enforcer will come down as a 3/2. Otherwise, Pyroblast is an absolute shoe-in here, being able to destroy a crab or counter something like an Archive Trap specifically, is very good. Um, Thoughtseize, I think, would be fine as well, and I could also see Surgical Extraction coming in, even if it's just, get a crab or play a crab, kill it with a Pyroblast, and then just mill them out or surgical them out.
I
I
do
think that
think
would
that the
probably be
really
really
live
good.
I think the really live surgical targets are the, oh, what's the Ancestral Recall? What card is
Visions
that?
of Beyond.
Yeah, Visions of Beyond and the Crabs, I think, are the real targets that make that
Yeah.
potentially worthwhile. The real question is whether or not there's enough cards that he wants to be taking out. It's interesting in that the Baleful Strixes aren't amazing, but at least they pressure to a certain degree. You definitely are keeping in the Hull Reachers, the Snaps, and Gurmag just because that is your clock. You are going to ride those all the way to victory.
Yeah.
Playing is a
Gurmag
potential
Angler
card
is
that could
also
come out.
huge in this matchup.
Oh, for sure. One of the unfortunate things that happened in that game, one was not finding a Gourmet Angler until oh so late, right? Until we were at the bottom of all the cards in the library. Because that was really what we were saying going into the game one was a card that was absolutely needed if Aiden was going to be able to steal game one from Mike.
Exactly.
Real
So,
no blood moons to hit fetch lands. I'm
um
almost would consider it, but I don't think I personally would.
I think that sounds fine, but given how many basics there are, I don't know if it's worth it potentially turning off your fetch lands or your dual lands. Because you need to be relying super hard on those fetches early, and that's the problem is that you're gonna want to be fetching up basics, which turns on the archive traps.
Yeah, that's very true. Let's go jump over to Mike's sideboard plan then. Mike has 2 Brazen Borrowers, 3 Fatal Push, 4 Force of Wills, 2 Reanimates, 2 Surgical Extractions, and 2 Yixala Jailer. This is absolutely a reader. A 2 mana, 2/1 that cards and graveyards lose all abilities. Turns out to be really good against Uro. Uh, Here's my
Also good
question.
against Hogak as well.
Yes, very good. Good against a couple of things. So here's my question: what do you want to be bringing in here?
um Marduk, thank you very much for the follow for one. Uh Otherwise, I could potentially see reanimates coming in honestly, just by virtue of if you manage to mill over something like a Baleful Strix or especially a Gurmag, just being able to well, maybe not the Gurmag, but being able to basically pull the card out or Snapcaster Mage. Mill over a Snapcaster Mage, cast reanimate on it, put it onto your side of the field, then cast a spell. Could be very good.
I agree with
Um
that.
Otherwise, I think Fatal Push is pretty good, being able to hit specifically the Baleful Strixes. But actually, no, you don't need to be hitting Baleful Strix with Fatal Push. Brazen Borrower, sorry, bounces Planeswalkers. That would also be very good.
Yeah, I could see that as well. Spexis, thank you so much for following us during that little bit there. Cathor, I appreciate you. For those who don't know, Mike is quite critical of certain people's dirty sleeves, such as myself, largely as the target of that. Cathor,
I'm
thank you for
guilty.
throwing the shade right back at him. Yeah, that's I got some dirty sleeves sometimes, fam. Let's see. So it looks like Aiden G, of course, is going to be on the play. Players both just mulliganing right now. Um, Mike not making his decision at the moment. Some, yes, I have a lot of dirty sleeves. Thank you, Katana Sleeves. If Katana, if you're watching this and you want to give out a sponsorship, I will rep you gladly any single time. But yes, they need to be changed quite frequently because they get dirty so fast.
Yeah. The beautiful, beautiful shuffle feel, but man, did they get
Hmm.
dirty quick.
Oh, it feels so good. All right, I'm going to tell this story real quick. I once had a judge call at a later stage of 5K. It was like round 7 or something like that. They just did a deck check, right? I had sleeved up katanas that morning and played, and literally in this judge call, or I'm sorry, not the judge call, in the deck check, it ended with the judge coming back and saying, "Hey, listen, you have 1 round to change out your deck sleeves because these are too dirty." And you know, that's I guess that's what happens after 8 rounds with katana sleeves.
Yep. No, they get dirty pretty quick. So, but yeah, they do feel absolutely wonderful. So, we see Aiden starting off with a basic island, and then Mike firing back with a basic island of his own, but casting Ponder. Okay, so Aiden is still going to cantrip on the first turn, just using Brainstorm instead on Mike's end step.
Both players keeping 7, which feels to be relatively good for Aiden, right? Especially with this brainstorm, hopefully going to be able to deal with the initial crabs. Where the best thing about playing against Dane Mill, if you can answer the early mill spells before you get to that 20 threshold and the ancestral visions are turned on,
Yep. Oh,
Oh,
here
oh,
we go. Here we
oh.
go. Fetches UC, cast Thoughtseize, response Archive Trap. Love it.
You got to force it.
Yeah, I'd imagine so. Oh, looks like it's not happening. Let's see if we got an Archive Trap number 2 coming in as well. Bolt, Thoughtseize, Lily the Last Hope, land, Colgan's Command, Bolt, Lily the Last Hope, Pyroblast, Brainstorm, land, Gurmag. Oh my goodness, that was an Archive Trap.
Hits both lilies, has 2 reanimation outlets, hits one of the K commands, there's 2 left in the deck, and hits one of the 2 Gurmags as well, which, as we talked about, was one of the most important
Hits
cards when it
two
came to actually
bolts as
pressuring.
well. Hits
Yeah, that
two
is good
bolts
as
as
well.
well. That is huge. Thoughtseize still in the stack. Archive Trap again!
That's sweet.
Oh my goodness. Him, land, ponder, land, snapcaster, ponder, baleful strix, land, surgical extraction, and land. I believe
All right, your
there's.
thoughts seems resolved now.
Wow. Yeah, it's a trap, indeed. Yeah, you can have your Thoughtseize. I'll just mill you 26 cards. Oh my goodness. And we got a Ruin Crab and a Brainstorm, and you 100% take the Ruin Crab there.
Oh, 100%. You have that
There's
many fetch
three
lands in
fetch
hand.
lands in hand.
Aiden now has less than 30 cards left in their library. Just so we're very clear, the opening 7 with the Brainstorm and just 2 mill spells out of Mike's deck has made it so Aiden already has less than 30.
I believe there's also over 10 lands in Aiden's graveyard already as well. That was a very land heavy top half of the library. There's not much left. Like, there could very literally be fetch lands that can't find the land you need. And I
I'd be
believe as well, the basic mountain's been milled over already. I think I saw either one or two swamps. And then I think the island. Like, Aiden might legitimately be out of basics already.
I'd be amazed if that was the case. I can't imagine that it will be. But we're going to go ahead and see a Brainstorm. There were all dead cards besides this unknown draw for Mike off the top. Likely putting some away. I would not be surprised if we see a fetch immediately, or at least on the subsequent turn. I imagine we're ditching some bad lands in here at the moment.
Yeah.
God, that felt so cool to have 2 archive traps go in the same turn. Oh, that felt nice.
Yeah. Fetch land.
So for any of you that don't know, there is the archive trap dream of the turn 0 win, where if you have all 4 archive traps and your opponent keeps 7, they're on the draw, or on the play regardless. And if they go turn 1 ponder or like turn 1 cantrip, in theory with a fetch land, in theory you can play all 4 archive traps and hit them for 52 cards and kill them basically on that draw off of the ponder.
If it's a brainstorm, it will kill them. If they kept their 7, that'll be 53 cards in library on the play. They'll have 1 left after you archive trap them 4 times.
Oh, that's so true. So you can
Actually,
turn
no,
1
because
it.
if they fetch land, that pulls the last card out of their library, and then
There
they'll
we
have
go.
exactly 52.
There we
Oh
go.
my
That's the
goodness.
dream. That's the archive trap dream right there. Unfortunately, we're
Yeah.
not seeing that right now. In other words, what I'm saying is to win this game so that we can see that happen in game 3. I want to see all 4.
There we go. I just found it amazing about how the archive trap got the actual game ender in game 1. Just hard cast for 5.
I mean, that's the truth, right? With so many of these ultimate. Thank you, Beyond Sadistic. Thank you so much. For those
That's
who
a
don't know,
trap.
Beyond Sadistic is our lovely stream tech here running the show for us today behind the scenes. You can see him in chat as MTG Paper Legacy. And again, just want to give a shout out to our table spotter for the last 2 rounds, Astrid. Astrid, thank you so much for everything that you do as well. For those who don't know, these are the people who actually run the show behind the stream here. Prez and I are just talking. Those are the ones who
Yeah.
work the magic.
Yeah. They got the hard jobs.
So
Fetches up Underground Sea, plays out Misty Rainforest, casts Visions of Beyond. Okay, so casts Ancestral Recall. Thinking hard, recounting the library. We know you've been archive trapped twice, so there's at least 26 cards there. 1, 2, 3, draws 3 cards. Of note, Mike has already played a land this turn. So if there was a bunch of crabs in there, that won't be happening. Well, I suppose he could still play a crab and then fetch, but man, this game has been very fast. And there were a lot of good cards in those first 2 archive traps.
yeah, is this looking like a pass back?
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Mike did get multiple crabs, is choosing to deploy them all on the subsequent turn to be able to go crab, land drop, fetch, fetch. um,
Yeah.
and basically just mill for 18 at that point, at that moment. But we'll have to see the way that this works.
Yeah.
The Baleful Strix beatdown. Okay, we were talking about how Aiden needed to clock, and he technically has one right now.
Yeah.
Fetch.
Fetch. Okay.
All right.
He's
All right.
like thinking, yeah, it's good. Yeah, yeah, no, we
You
can't
need
we
to.
can't archive trap you until you've grabbed the land.
There we go. Got to do the quick double check.
Yeah.
Tapping out for
Plays
Jace. Or
Snapcaster.
no.
Yeah. And then figuring out how he wants to tap the lands, taps it like that, cast Snapcaster. Yeah, tapped all four, trying to cast a spell, and then remembered that if it gets countered, it doesn't work. After all, Mike could have brought in Force of Wills.
At the same time, also very easily could have the what are they? Drown in the locks, right? That's
That
another
is
potential
true.
way to prevent this from happening. Do you
On
think
another
we get
note, Drown in the
surgical
Lock
here?
is very good in this deck.
Yeah.
Um, I think the surgical could be fine. You would definitely want to wait until Aiden has decided what the Snapcaster targets first. We're gonna pay a black or a blue brainstorm. Okay.
Oh, to be clear, I'm talking about as Aiden's choice in terms of what card is going to flash back right now. It feels like it's
Oh,
pretty clearly either cantrip, but could potentially be the surgical just to hit the visions of beyond.
I could see that. Given the fact that he tapped out the two lands already, I was originally thinking him to Turok, but I could be wrong.
Of note, according to our table spotter, it does seem like this brainstorm is happening in response to the surgical before a target is declared. So before it
Before the
enters the battlefield.
Snapcaster.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes, before the Snapcaster resolves.
Yeah. And also having the fetch land to make it the perfect brainstorm as well.
Snapcaster resolves.
Yeah. And then now we are deciding on targets here. Aiden thinking very hard about this one.
There's so many choices. There's
Yeah.
like at a certain point, it's just cognitive overload. It's like, wait, I can choose any of these 10 cards right now. Ooh, let's think. Targeting surgical. All right.
Yeah. I think that's probably correct in this particular case. Visions of Beyond is an extremely good card when it's turned on.
That feels like the one that you have to hit here.
Yeah.
There's already been 2 traps. So if you surgical a trap, you're just fading 2 cards. I don't think that's really worth it, as opposed to what Ancestral Visions is able to do.
Yeah.
Twangy, thank you so much for the follow. Thank you for joining us here at the MTGPL.
Surgical in response.
Are we surgicaling the surgical? Oh, Flusterstorm.
Flusterstorm. Ooh, that'll
Oh.
do it. Says he doesn't want to get him dazed. So in response, surgical gets surgicaled, and then that'll be a Flusterstorm targeting all copies of that. Okay. So that's kind of big now. And then so this surgical is gonna probably be alt casted here. Yeah, it is. And then what are we targeting here?
If it has to be Ancestral Visions, right?
Uh I could see definitely hitting the Visions of Beyond.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
I could also see hitting surgical, honestly. Or is he going for Ruin Crab? Oh no, counting the graveyard. Okay. Of note, yeah, Daze is online again, but at the same time, Aiden still has a mana open to pay for it, given that the surgical was alt cast.
Player's tanking really hard here, figuring out exactly how
Targets
to resolve
crab.
this.
Targets the Ruin Crab. Oh, Hedron Crab in hand. Oh no.
Yeah, that was the new crab that was targeted, right? The new one from
Yeah, the new
Zendikar Rising.
Zendikar one. Yeah.
Okay.
And it looks like Mike found two Bitter Blossoms touching each other, so just making sure that he moves those out of the way. Yeah, still have the Thieves Guild Enforcers in. More
So surgicals did
surgicals.
come in.
Yeah. That might have been it, actually. Didn't really notice that much. And also we'll get the that other Ruin Crab in the Graveyard exiled, the card that it actually targeted. Oh, I'm so dumb. Force of Will did come in, given that there is a Force of Will in Mike's hand right now.
Yes, it did, and we also saw the Brazen Borrow as well, as I believe. So we did see
Yeah,
a good number of cards coming in. Would not be surprised if we saw Dazes really heavily cut, especially when Mike was going to be on the draw against Aiden, who also had
yeah,
seen them in the previous game.
yeah. I also actually like this kind of just letting that happen there, specifically targeting the Ruin Crab, because Hedron Crab is going to come down here right away. And then the other thing of note too is that this fetch land is still uncracked. We have a Prismatic Vista in hand, and we also have a Glimpse the Unthinkable. And if this top is a blue card, then oh my goodness, this hand is going to be a lot of, or this turn is going to be a lot of cards. Cast the Crab. Looks like Crab resolves. Plays. Oh no, thinking.
I mean, you got to play the fetch land here.
I'd imagine you would for sure. I think he might be waiting to decide if he wants to fetch first before playing it. Because I think what he's probably doing here is he's fetching in the event that that's like a fatal push that's being held up, right?
Which is interesting. So if you're playing around Fatal Push, wouldn't you want to play the land to put a trigger on so that Aiden then responds with the Fatal Push and you have the active fetch lands in play to be able to respond to and still get value?
I could see
Regardless,
that.
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The
Yeah.
mill effect is happening here.
Wow, that mill hitting surgical him to Turok and Kolaghan's command. This one hitting ponder fatal push and him to Turok. Wow, that's 6 cards of real good gone. And then plays basic island for turn. Oh wait, no, that
Oh, that
was
was the
wait,
fetch.
hold on. Oh, that was the fetch of the basic island. Okay, which was land, brainstorm land. Looks like
I imagine we're just going to jam this glimpse immediately here.
I would say so. I don't imagine a scenario where you wouldn't doing a quick library count. Yeah, cast the glimpse. Flusterstorm, Baleful Strix, Narset, Jace, Pyroblast, Jace,
Oh,
Snapcaster, Fatal Push. Oh
that's
my
the second
goodness.
Gurmag Angler as well.
Hull
This
Breacher
is,
too.
yeah, this feels like it's locked up now. Ooh.
I would be there's 2 cards left in Aiden's library, and I
Oh,
do not imagine that there's any amount of answer that would be in there. And we also know there is another land in hand. So either way, the 3 damage coming across from Aiden is not going to be enough in the next 2 turns.
Aiden, cast Brainstorm. Go out like a gentleman.
I'm gonna
It's
go
the,
out on my own terms.
it's the classic be at one life and just crack your own fetch land. Just kill yourself.
Yep.
Of note, you have this single turn unless you deal with the crab because there's a known land in hand as well.
Yeah. Smash for 3. And fighting to the bitter end. I like it. And yes, you most certainly did do that last week, Argon, where you ended up milling over everything. Uh oh, here we go. What's targeting? Fatal push?
Yeah, looks like it.
Yeah. Fatal push on the crab.
Mike, of course, down to 11.
Yep.
There is a hard cast force up.
Yeah, hard cast forces up. There is 5 damage coming across.
Only one red source, so only possible to have a single bolt unless it is
Well, if
red
this
source
is
bolt bolt.
yeah, well, if it's bolt on Mike's turn, there
There's
was a
one
bolt.
bolt. Oh
Oh.
no. Oh, one damage short. That was so cool. So if there was another red source, it would be able to bolt K command for 2, attack for 5. That was actually a really sweet ending. So close to being there. My goodness.
Yeah, so that actually could have been like if there was another Snapcaster in graveyard, that could have been um Kolaghan's command 2 damage, uh get back Snapcaster Mage. And then if there was a second red source, it would have been Bolt, Snap, Bolt, and Upkeep.
Oh, that's so true. We could have done it before the draw happened there.
Oh wow. That was a
Fantastically well
phenomenal
done.
match though.
Really well played by both of our players as well. We didn't really get a chance to talk about this after the first match, but really all of our players here today putting on a really fantastic show for us. Prez,
Yeah.
real quick before we go into the break and we get ready for our third and final match tonight, if I was in this chat, if I was new to this community and I saw what was happening tonight and I wanted to get involved, how could I do that?
So, if you drop, thank you very much, Beyond Statistic. If you drop exclamation point Discord in the chat below, it'll get you a link that you can join the Discord yourself if you would like to come and play with us. We have Legacy firing all day, every day in the LFG channel. We have weekly tournaments. Every Tuesday, we have a fight night event, which are 3 rounds of streamed Legacy. That's what we're doing right now. Signups for the June League started today as well. Casalvo, thank you very much, or C Salvo, thank you very much for the follow. But yeah, we just had signups for the June League open up today. So make sure to jump in there before next Tuesday because that's when the league's going to start playing, and then signups will be closed for another month.
Yeah,
So
and of note, of course, the league matches being essentially you sign up, you get assigned to a pool of players who are in similar time zones with you, about 7 people, sometimes 6 to 7, and you have a few weeks, typically 2 or 3, to play each person in your pool. The person who ends up getting the most wins out of your pool goes on to a final bracket, and we have a single elimination tournament to figure out the champion for the monthly league. But y'all, we're gonna go ahead and get ready for this third match. We'll be away for for probably like 5 minutes or so. Thank you so much for joining us for this second match. Again, big props to Mike Diff, and thank you again to Aiden G. And we will see you guys on the other side.